Hey, Rena.
Hi, Jem. How you
You know,
going?
do you know why I'm really excited for this conversation?
Tell
And
me.
I'm not just saying this is true. I mean, you and I know each other. We're friends. We love each other already. That's great. And we've always had such good chats and, nattering away about stuff that we find fascinating.
Yep.
But I don't know anything about your book. And you've written a book. And it's like, holy crap, the last time I saw you, you hadn't written this book. And you've written the book and you've got a publishing deal and it's done. Like you're sharing it with the world now, and I am so curious and keen
Yeah,
um,
good,
to
good.
hear about it.
I know it has, and I haven't seen you probably for the last 2 years because my head
Yeah,
has been in this.
right. The formula of life.
Formula of life: go deeper, rise higher.
And do you know
And
what I reckon already? I have to hear the principles, but I've just got this sneaking suspicion that
Mhm.
when I hear the principles that you've laid out in this book, I'm going to look back to when I had my what people call a midlife crisis, but I call it my midlife awakening, my midlife
Yes.
awakening. 12, well, no, wow, longer than 12. It started in 2012, and then it was a period of a year, really a year or two of the depths of it,
Yes,
where I had to shed and lose pretty much everything,
that's
except for
right.
my two sons. I got to keep my two boys, thank God,
Mm.
week on, week off. In fact, it was my two kids that were kind of the shining light to get me through. But anyway, I'm not going to digress. I reckon that when I hear the principles from your book, I'm going to be like, holy shit, why did I not have this book at that time?
That's
But
right.
yeah,
And good on you, Jim, because I've made it easier for so many people because exactly like your story,
yeah,
it happens to all of us,
yeah,
absolutely, on this earth.
yeah,
But we need to go out there and find the sources, find all the material, find what resonates. And it's a bit of a trial and error, yeah? Like
yeah,
this works, but this doesn't. I'm 2 steps forward, 5 steps back.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's what the formula of life is about. It was kind of like my 30-year journey
yeah,
because I had such a tumultuous childhood and there was so much residue of pain.
yeah,
And it was literally probably the same as you know what I mean? In my 30s, I kind of, maybe not so midlife, but in my 30s, it just got worse and worse. And it was like, what? I've already been on my healing journey for 10 years. How
yeah,
is it getting worse? So there was layers and layers.
yeah,
And through all the principles, through all the activities, all the exercises, all the courses, retreats, everything that I had done, it was kind of happening naturally to me. It was
yeah,
kind of all the information started to thread, you know what I mean? And it was kind of like, oh, and it was these aha moments that this and then that, and that's why that happens. And it was literally like, the detectives that have them on the board with all these
yeah.
little pins. And this is what I came up with. And it's really interesting. My son literally just last night says to me, why is it in that order, mum? And I
Uh-huh.
said, read the book and you'll see it doesn't matter what order it is because I see it like a circle.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
that threads with that and then that. And then by the time you get to principle six, because there's six principles, it'll
yeah,
just go back into one again, you know?
yeah. I love
So,
it. Don't leave me
yes.
hanging. What are the principles?
So principle one is connection to source, connection to you,
Uh-huh.
knowing who we truly are, what
Yeah,
we're truly made up of, how we are oneness, but we are individual. And
yeah,
it starts to go really deep into, of course, all the parts of us, our higher self, our human self, our inner child, how they communicate with each other, who holds the pain, the conscious, the unconscious, the subconscious thoughts. It really delves into understanding what we are as this spiritual being living in this human body.
yeah.
And
And I love that. I just even love that the question of what we are rather than who, because this who am I question, we can get lost in ego and identity and separation and uh,
yes,
but be beneath that is, hang on a second, what am I as a part, an intrinsic and inseparably a part of the greater system, right? You can't not be connected as a part of the greater system, but I am an expression that is a unique expression within the greater system of consciousness, and so what is that? I
that's
find that
right.
stuff absolutely fascinating.
And
Yeah.
how much they've tried to separate us, how much they've tried to show, these groups. And this has got, and I say in this chapter, this has got nothing to do with race, with culture, with religion. This
Oh,
is not segregation. This is
yeah.
we are all one and we are the
100%.
same. We are
Yeah.
made up of the same things. It's the
Yeah.
programming, the conditioning, all of that that makes us different. But we are
Yeah.
all at core the same.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. 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 I
principle
love that.
one finishes with you delving into and helping you very tangibly and very logically to find out your purpose. And
I love,
I love that this
yeah.
chapter as an introduction. You would probably think at the end of the book you're going to find out. No, no, no,
Right.
no.
Right at the
It's a
start.
quick 2 minute conversation that I
Yeah.
can help anyone find out their purpose.
It's so good. And you know, when because I've read lots of research on humans, I'm fascinated in human behavior and the human experience. And people who have a sense of purpose, they report much higher levels of well-being. They're more resilient. They have more energy to get through the tough times. They stay on their course. They love their work more. They report to have better relationships. It's that like all the data is there.
100%.
When you feel like you've got a purpose to your life. And so here you are in the very first chapter in principle number one. It's like boom. I mean, that could be a whole book on its own, just
I
principle.
know it could be, but it's a really quick understanding of what this purpose is. You are the other, someone else can have the same purpose as you, like
Yep.
to empower. You can be to empower too, and
Yep.
50,000 other people could be. But how we do it and what we offer and the people that we resonate with and who magnetically is attracted to us is going to
Yeah.
be very, very different. And there is 8 billion of us, so there's a lot of service to be done.
Yeah.
Then we move into, and I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a, because we're going to have different conversations about each one, but where I'm just kind of giving you a little outline. And then it moves into the most amazing reprogramming childhood wounding.
Oh,
Understanding your childhood wounding, which is your
wow.
subconscious limiting beliefs.
Yep.
And again, all the principles have tangible, very, very easy, logical way, like exercises,
Yep.
activities for you to go, okay, let's go. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you can see them.
Yep.
People don't know what their subconscious is saying, and it
Yeah.
overrides your conscious thoughts every single time.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have to
It's
look at those
driving.
really quickly. We have to
Yeah.
go, okay, we need to repro, and then you have this 30-day reprogramming system where you can just go, okay, so the work starts straight away.
Yep.
Work starts in principle one. And so you go into reprogramming childhood wounding and looking at the wounded child and bringing it back to the free child and then
Yeah.
understanding how it always comes up. And I
Yeah.
say this to people, they're like, oh, Rena, so after I do my 30 days, that's it, I finished.
Yeah.
And I giggle
Yeah.
at them and I said, no, there's layers. And when
Yeah.
I mean that, my childhood, my childhood wounding came up a couple of days ago and I was having a little sook. But
Yeah.
what happens is as soon as you as the conscious parent, you can
Yeah.
feel it, you can see, you can hear it. She's so loud. And
Yeah.
I'll grab her straight away and nurture her straight away and flip it instead of
Yeah.
being, reactive. It can be
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
responsive.
Yeah. Hey, you know how people say, because it's in your subconscious and it's driving everything because our subconscious or our unconscious, but our subconscious is driving 98% of
Yeah.
what's going on, something like that, right? So when you've got trauma or wounding from your childhood, subconscious, and you're not aware of it, how do you heal that when you're not even aware of it, right? And people ask me, how did you understand all of a sudden the deep limiting beliefs that you'd been holding on to since you were a kid? Do you know what happened for me? I had this most amazing spiritual experience in a North American Indian sweat lodge on First Nations people's land here in Australia with a
Yeah.
men's circle that I've been sitting around men's circle for 12 years, a group of us men that sit around a fire and talk. And
Well,
we had decided to have a guided lodge, a sweat lodge with some men who are trained in the North American traditional ways of sweat. Anyway, it was in this sweat lodge and it was a really, really hot sweat. And so you're in pitch black. I don't know if your listeners or anyone who's listening to this has ever been in a sweat lodge before, but it's
mhm.
pitch black, super, super hot. You've got the father stones inside the tent and you're naked and you're in there. It was a men's sweat, so there was just men in there.
Yeah.
And anyway, I had this out of body experience, and I don't know whether it was heat exhaustion or whether it was the mantra that we were singing or whatever it was, but nonetheless, I had this complete out of body spiritual experience, and I was 5 years old, specifically five, not 4 or 6. I was 5 years old, and I was flying around in the sky, and I was free. I was completely. It was my age of innocence, right?
Hmm.
Felt completely innocent and free, like there was nothing bad in the world at all. Anyway, I had this out of body experience. All the other men had left the sweat except for my guide, who was sitting there with me to make sure I was okay. And after a few hours, he tapped me and said, Jem, Do you want to go and go back out around the fire with all the other men? We all went back out around the fire, and there was a naming ceremony, and men were having a very profound experience, and they were giving themselves their North American Indian name and all this. And I found it hilarious. I was still 5 years old. I just thought it was shits and giggles. I was cracking up laughing.
Love it.
And there was this body of water nearby. It was a dam on this property that we were on, really cold water. And the men started going down to wash the mud off themselves in the water. And I ran down like this 5-year-old and I jumped into the water and I went under the water and I jumped up out of the water. And the first thing that came to speak was
Yeah.
me naming myself. And I said, I am naked wet boy. Like this.
So you were totally embodying him. He literally came in, and that was the free child.
Was. So then I'll try and keep it short. So then I went home that night to my mum had been child minding. My kids were about, I don't know how old they were back then, 6 and 4 years old, say. And I went back home, mum went, and then I went to bed that night. And that's when I had the dream where it came out from the subconscious into the conscious. And there
Mm.
was this serpent living deep inside me, and I had to get this serpent out. And the serpent had been living in my core for a long time. That was its home, but it was time to get it out. And in the dream, I was reaching down into my throat to try and get this serpent out. But every time I got it out, it would wriggle back inside me again because that was its home. But it felt like it was time to get it out. In the dream, I actually had to wake up from my dream. I had to wake up because one of my kids was unsettled and I had to go in, settle my child, but I knew the work in the dream wasn't done yet. And I went back to bed and I went back into sleep, back into the dream to do the work, right?
Yeah.
And then anyway, I needed the help of these other men. So these other men helped me get the snake out. And then we got the snake out and that was the end of the dream. I woke up that morning and I went, boom. The serpent was my limiting belief that I'm not good enough because of this thing that happened when I was 6 years old, when my dad lost his temper with me and beat me up when I was 6. So
Yeah.
when I was 6 was the age of the innocence being completely
That's
smashed,
right.
right? And that was the trauma. And I believed I wasn't good enough for my dad because if I was good enough for him, he wouldn't have beat me up. So then I started this belief from the age of 6, I'm not good enough. And that became the foundation of all of my limiting beliefs, which played out in anxieties and sexual anxieties and all sorts of stuff all through my
All
life until I had this dream, this sweat lodge, and then this dream, and it kaboom, and then lost my marriage, lost my job, lost everything, and then had to.
welcome to your spiritual awakening.
There you go.
Exactly. So that's what the principle does, you know what I mean? And you had it in real time, yeah? You were literally going through the motions. But a lot of people don't know their limiting beliefs. It
No, and they
all
can
is
find out through this principle in your book.
That's right. And it goes deep into the first 10 years. And you know, some clients always say to me, come on, not everything can come from our childhood. Yes. Between the years of 0 to 10, stories that are formed that gave you impact, that you put a meaning, not the story. The story is not even important, but you remember the story and you put a meaning. Who did? The wounded child who
Yeah,
becomes wounded. It was the child who becomes wounded. So
yeah,
I call it, you know, the sook, the victim, the
yeah,
ego, the subconscious belief system, the,
yeah,
the, the dark side of your beings that you don't understand, that shadow work. And you kind of go, okay, so when you go back to these stories, the ones that you remember, I always say have to be ones that you remember, not the ones that
yeah,
people told you or mum told you. It's
yeah,
the ones that you hold and go, okay. And then the child will put 5 to 6 meanings to that story. And then throughout their entire life, they will find evidence that on loop, keep on finding evidence where that meaning is true.
yes,
And so I'll say to a client, okay, how old are you now? And they'll say, oh, 35. Okay, great. Okay, so tell me how many times, and I'll take those meanings and I have a
yeah,
list of them. How
yeah,
many times in from 35 go backwards, 35, 34, go backwards in your life? How many times have you felt not good enough? No, blah, 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 blah,
yeah,
blah, whatever the meanings are.
yeah,
And they'll just like look at me and I'll say, small, medium, or large. Was it a
yeah,
small ball? Was it a medium? Or was it a big? And 100% all the time. Oh my God, large. Tell me a problem that you had just lately, just a problem that you had lately. And they'll say something. And I'll go,
yeah,
okay, we'll go back to the meaning. Did you
yeah,
feel this? And they're like, and then it's so profound. And then they just discover it. And then we have to reprogram because
yeah,
that has been sitting in there, depending how old you are too. You know what I mean? That's why sometimes I'm like, how old are you? And they're like, oh, why do you need to know my age? You know, and I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
you need to know because, hey, you've been holding on to this limiting belief for 5 years. Are
yeah,
you 15 years old? Or are you
yeah,
45? Or are you 60? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why it's so much harder. That's why we have so many victims of the world, because as it goes and as the years go on, they start to think life's just happening to me, but it's
Yes.
happening for them. And they don't understand that they have the power to change it. They have the power to create their own reality. So
Yes.
this one's,
You and I are singing from the same song sheet, sister. Hey, what's principle three?
positive thinking and creating alignment.
Hallelujah. Bring
This
it
all
on.
goes into, what are your thoughts? We have all these thoughts, 60,000 thoughts a day to 80,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah.
75% of them are negative, 95% of them are repetitive.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
When you're just kind of staring into space or you're just daydreaming, if
Yeah.
you had a tape recorder and you could
Yeah.
hear that, you would be devastated
Oh,
to hear.
I was being interviewed last week with a new friend of mine in Vegas. She's got this cool podcast, and we
Yeah.
were talking about this too. And I said, imagine if you could take, I mean, because if you just listen to the thoughts inside your brain, right? These thoughts that are just generating. If you could just sit and listen to them, imagine if you could take them out and make it a person sitting next to you, and you're on the couch trying to watch the telly, and the person next to you, non-stop talking, and negatively, and anxiously, and quite often,
Repetitively, and the same thing. I always
right?
say it's like a computer. We have to clear out the mind and we've got to start again. So you just put a new computer, you open the box, it's this new software, and it's
Yeah,
blank. There's not one app, there's not one thing on this computer.
yeah,
Can you? And it's a lot of work. It's so
yeah,
much easier to say than to be done. But then I tell them that you can choose the thought,
yeah,
choose the thought. Now,
yeah.
most people, these people have never had that thought before. I'm
No,
proud of myself. I'm amazing. I'm
yeah,
light. I'm
yeah.
vibrant. We choose everything. We choose our emotions. We choose our thoughts. We choose everything. But people
We
think we're
can. A
not.
lot of people don't, but we can.
Yeah,
You
we
know,
can.
it's about being more conscious, right? And when you think about it, when you put something on high repeat, especially if you say it out loud, I mean
Yeah.
inside as well, but when you say
Yeah.
it out loud, because the energy required to think a thought and then move the vocal cords and then create a sound and then put it into word, and word is on vibration,
Right.
right?
And you just said the word. And so this principle, positive thinking and creating alignment, then starts to make you understand what you're doing. Okay,
Yeah,
great. I'm having all these thoughts. Do you
yeah,
know what you are doing? You
yeah,
are sending, exactly like you said, you are sending a vibration
yeah,
which has a frequency. And I always say words have, each one has a frequency. So if I
yeah,
say to you, I trust, and
yeah,
then I say to you, I don't trust,
yeah,
that entire frequency, the vibration of that, just by putting the word don't in there, has changed everything. So the
yeah,
universe is not listening to your words, it's listening to the vibration of your words.
yeah,
And so the vibration, it feels different. If you said, I trust, I trust 6 times, 10 times, you can
yeah,
start to feel it. And when you start saying, I don't trust, and just by bringing that don't in there, you
yeah,
start to feel your actual vibration start to
yeah,
alter.
yeah.
So it's about, first of all, finding out what you're thinking. Then
Mm,
we're going to start understanding how vibration and frequency and what it does and how it works, how it's this
yeah,
magnet,
yeah.
even though, and exactly what you just said, even though if it's just a thought.
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely.
therefore,
Well, your thoughts, those thoughts that are become repetitive and become reflex thoughts, so they fire
yeah,
on their own because they've fired so many times that they've created a little neural highway, right?
that's right.
Our thoughts become our lenses. They become our belief system through which we filter information from the outside world, from the universe, from
Yep.
our experience of life, and we distort the information to match up our beliefs. Like you said before, Rena, about we seek evidence to back up our belief. If
And
you
that's
believe
it.
life is tough, you will experience
Yeah.
life be tough. Do you know what I mean?
I
But if,
always say, show me what you're thinking,
yeah,
and I'll tell you what your life's like. Tell
yeah,
me what your life's like, and I'll
yeah,
tell you what you're thinking.
yeah. I love it. It's so true.
So you kind of just start to understand that I'm trying to teach everyone that I create my own reality. 5 words,
Yeah,
5 words, and
yeah,
the power of those words, that
yeah,
I'm creating it. There's something that's happening in your life. You have created it through your thoughts, through your feeling, through
yeah,
your emotions, and the
yeah,
way that this experience is happening to you.
yeah.
So it really starts to make you understand what vibration is, what frequency is. Then we can look at manifestation. Yeah. Then
Yes.
we can look at the relationship you have with money.
Yeah.
Then. There's so much expansion in all of this chapter. It's actually probably one of my longest chapters, so people can really understand it. And
Good.
the scale of consciousness. You
Yeah.
know, how we all have these different emotions, how we all up and down. Yeah, it's a heartbeat. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jem, it's a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Life is not a flat line, that's death,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have to go up with it and we have to go down with it. But down doesn't mean the bad. It's just the duality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's kind of going up and down. And if you can make the choice to choose positive thought and to choose to create alignment with this vibration, because it's not just positive thought, here's your affirmations and this is what's going to happen and it's going to
Yeah.
change. You
Yeah.
have to embody that. And you
Yeah.
have to practice. The work is always done for the person individually, and how much work you put in. People will say to me, "Oh, don't you get angry? You always seem so happy and so high vibration." I said, "No, I'm still human.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just because I have practiced so much that I'm so aware of what's happening inside of me."
And
And so
on that
you
thing,
have
Rena,
to,
on that thing about practice, this was something that, has really that I've really embodied over the last 12 years rather than prior. Like prior, I've always been curious. I've always been on a spiritual journey to understand existence,
yeah,
my version of existence, and to seek more happiness, etc. Always. And, I've traveled, I spent many years traveling around the world, mainly barefoot and dreadlocked in all sorts of weird and wonderful places looking for this, and I do a bit of meditation here, or I go and do a sound bath there, or I go and do a bit of yoga here. I do little bits and bobs, little samples of it. It's only really been in the last 12 years that I've truly begun to live and embody practice. And
yes,
to have practices means that you don't get good at it and stop doing it. You don't
that's right.
do some affirmations and then create a positive mindset and then stop doing your affirmation. I mean, I meditate and do affirmations and do my cold water therapy every day.
Daily,
It's a
part of
part of
your
life.
ritual.
And I will do it for the rest of my life because
Absolutely.
it's a way of being. It's not, you're not trying to get to a destination, right?
No, that's exactly right. And this is what it's trying to teach. That's what we're trying to say. We're the people that put in the work. I always say, like, coming into the healing journey, and I explain this in the book, is like coming into this dark tunnel. It's optional. No one's pushing you.
Yeah.
It is totally optional.
Yeah.
But once you enter, the doors close behind you. You can't
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah. 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 There's no going
And
back.
and when you're standing there in this dark, scary tunnel, you have these hands coming out of the tunnel and they're slapping you. And you're like, oh my God, you turn around, you can't open the door. What are you going to do? The only option is to walk forward. Now,
Yeah.
in that moment, it's uncomfortable. In that moment, that's why people don't want to start their healing journey and the self discovery and to get into self mastery, because
Yeah.
they're like, hold on, I've just walked in. I feel so uncomfortable. It's so scary. I have so much fear, but I can't get out now. Walk forward. Now, it's the unknown, it's the trust that you have to have to yourself, to the universe, that we are one anyway. And you have to move forward. And I always say to them, as you move forward, and you have to make the decision because it's hurting, you have to keep going.
Yeah.
Those hands are going to become taps, and then you're going to keep on walking and they're going to become applause. You know what I mean? And you keep on walking, and then there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about death. We're talking about the light that we have turned on, that consciousness that we've turned on, that I understand myself and my authentic self. I
Yeah.
always talk about all these people, I hear a lot of videos and spiritual gurus, and they're always talking about the authentic self, authentic self. But so many people, Jem, right? I don't know if you would know too, your clients, people don't know what the authentic self is.
Yeah.
People aren't aware of the
Yeah.
power that they have. People aren't aware. They think this life is just happening, and these are all my bad things that have happened, and my relationship is not great. And so this book, the Formula of Life, is really making you understand, and to show you that all 8 billion of us actually experience the same thing, of at what our authentic self is made up of, who
Yeah.
we really are, what is happening to us, what is happening up here, what is happening inside here, and the formula that
Yeah.
happened, and then this happened, and you took the meaning from that, and that's why they thread into another.
Uh-huh.
So then we go into another amazing chapter, which is the light and dark sides of your being.
Uh-huh.
Everyone thinks that we just need to be this, cliche that if you're spiritual, you sit on top of mountains, you meditate, you are Buddha, nothing disturbs you. We are just pure light. No, we are
No.
made up like everything in this world in duality of light and dark, and that makes the whole, the yin and yang.
100%. It can't be any other way. When you think about it, there would be no light if there wasn't dark. There would be no yin if
No,
there wasn't yang. There wouldn't be feminine if there was no
that's
masculine.
right. And so
They
I don't
coexist.
know.
Two parts of the duality actually, not only do they coexist, but without each other, they don't exist. This life-death
Exactly.
union. And so, yeah, I love that. I'm so happy that you've got a whole chapter in there about that because
Yes.
at the start of my book, one of the prefaces that I say at the start of the book is I'm going to talk about apparent duality. And from now on, I'm going to refer to it as AD, apparent duality. And I refer to it all the way through the book. It's in every chapter of my book. And the reason I call it apparent duality is because it's from the human perspective that we perceive this duality, when in actual fact, I believe anyway, that outside of the human experience from just the universal isness,
Yes.
everything is one. Day and night is one.
That's right. It is one.
Is one. It's all one. But from our beautiful human sensibility, we experience winter and summer. We experience day and night. We experience yin and yang. We experience
That's
light and
right.
dark. That's part of our way of existing and breathing
Yeah.
through this experience, right? So I'm really glad you've got that
This
in.
principle four for me was I really got to the depths of it in when I was doing my Reiki mastership.
Yeah.
And I really understood it because all of those parts that are so undesirable that
Yeah.
people have told you, your parents have told you, your partner has told you, and if you weren't so controlling and you're so manipulative and whatever those dark sides of you that we have spent so many years of our lives trying to bury and not look at, when
Mm.
you start to put those aspects into the light and you go, oh my God, you start to understand this. And this is what this chapter does. The
Yeah.
light doesn't always serve you,
Yeah.
and the dark sometimes serves you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's showing you where does the light not serve you and not
Yeah.
serve others, and
Yeah.
where does your dark aspects, your dark qualities serve you and serve others. And I give you these amazing examples.
Yeah.
You're renovating your kitchen, and the guys come in and they say, "Oh yeah, it's going to take 2 weeks and it's $10,000." 4 weeks later, they're having smoko breaks and they're still in your kitchen. It's not done. They needed to get more materials and and they're going to start ripping you off. And it's not $10,000 now, it's gone to $15,000.
Yeah.
Which part, and this is about taking control, which
Mm.
part of your light or your dark are you going to bring? It's not going to be my light. I'm not going to go to my compassion. My compassion is not going to get an answer. It's not going to get movement. It's not going to get what I want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I have to look at my dark and go, okay, which one? And then say I choose my controller and
Yeah.
I say, I need to. So when it's consciously serving me and serving others,
Yeah.
then you understand it. So they talk about, we talk about, like Buddha says, we're just breath, we're just being, we
So
just
does,
are.
does your lioness come into the kitchen when they're having a smoko and say, "Get on to the bloody ground. Get the
and
job done, boys. Come on."
And isn't it funny? You don't even have to say it like that. You can say it with such poise. You can
I was
just,
kind of, I was kind of
yeah,
joking.
but we work with that, because people go, and then I cracked it, then I lost it.
Yeah.
But you don't have to.
You don't have
When
to.
you're in control and you
Yeah.
bring in this aspect and it's in control and it is that lioness, it is that goddess, it is that god, it is that dragon that's
Yeah.
going to do that. But it
Yeah.
doesn't have to breathe fire. It can just say it with power. And
100%.
you will
And
get that thing.
you're more effective, aren't you, when the less demonstrative you are, as in like going over the top, the more coming from your place of equanimity, but
That's
still with that
right.
power behind it.
The
This,
Shalom monk,
yeah, who
Yeah,
goes,
the
"Oh,"
great masters
and
of,
everyone's like, "Oh my God, yeah, sure, no worries."
great masters.
Yeah.
So this one for me was really like through my life when I started to apply this principle and I started to see, that's when I really got into a really beautiful, deep sense of self-love for myself.
Yeah.
Because as a child, in my marriage, in, just friendships, the things that you think that you had to hide, or they came out only when you were angry or when you weren't getting your way. And then they just started to shift and go, no, they serve purpose.
Yeah.
And when I embodied them and I went, I'm not trying to push you away anymore. And I'm not trying to push these dark aspects away anymore. They are me and they make my whole, just like in the yin and yang, where the
Yeah.
dark and light work together.
Yeah.
That's when you really embody power,
Beautiful. I
which
love
then,
it.
when you said it, comes into principle 5, the second
Yeah.
last principle, which is feminine masculine power.
Ah, beautiful.
Oh,
So good.
how crazy. I mean, sometimes I just get so full on, and I just want to scream at the world of what's happening at the moment with all this confusion. And
Oh no.
oh, do you know what I mean?
Crazy, crazy. Do you know this feminine masculine thing has been so much fun for me and Talia because we both came into our relationship, me at a time in my life of rediscovering and more deeply discovering my masculine because I'd been quite in my feminine energy.
Yeah,
And for her to do the
yeah,
same thing, for her exploring and surrendering into her feminine energy because she'd had a lot of masculine going on in her
yeah,
past relationship for all other reasons that I'm not going to go into.
yeah.
But because we were both doing the learning together, going to the workshops together, reading the books to each other, just exploring it together, and because we understood that masculine doesn't mean male and feminine doesn't mean female
Oh, it's got
necessarily,
nothing to do with
right?
gender. Nothing
Right?
to do with gender.
Nothing to do with gender, just energy styles, and
That's
that
right.
polarity, because we did some beautiful, gorgeous workshops around all this stuff. The polarity, as in the sexual attraction or the charge, the attraction between the two of you, is when one's at one, one's right at the out on their masculine, and one's right out on their feminine. And because we knew that we both had access to both, we would dance with it. Like if I came home from work and
Absolutely.
Charles was there working on her business on her computer and she was in her masculine because she was getting shit done. She had a deadline. She needed to get a result and she was in her masculine energy.
Yep.
I'd come in and notice that and go, and I'd go into my feminine energy and I'd be in another room, moving around, just putting some music on, start to cook some dinner, start maybe burn some, like whatever, like just getting into my,
And that's what we're trying to teach people. You
all
just
right.
did that. You just did that organically. But it's also because you've studied it, because you went to explore. We all
Yeah, it
have
was
a form.
conscious. It wasn't accidentally. We
Yeah.
were studying it, reading books, going to.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
If we had have had your book, Principle Five,
Would
boom,
understand it.
we
So
would have had like,
exactly what you said. We all have a dominant core, right?
yeah,
So I'm more in my dominant in my masculine, believe it
yeah,
or not. And a lot of people think, oh, you're just such a goddess, and all these beautiful compliments. And I just go, I'm actually really in my masculine.
yeah,
And my husband, who I thought was such an alpha male when I met him, he was so in his masculine. He's actually more in his feminine. He's
he
more
is. Yeah,
goes with
yeah,
the flow. So the feminine will go with the flow. And that is, yes, the
yeah,
beautiful attraction of where two people when it is opposite. But
yeah,
you learn to then balance both of them,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so when we learn to balance both of them and we explain in this beautiful principle what is this feminine and how they work together. And I use an example like they're driving in a car together. The
yeah,
masculine's always got the wheel
yeah,
and the feminine's got her legs hanging out of the window, the wind in her hair, and she's saying, and this is what I want to do. And he just worships her. He says to her, absolutely. Right.
yeah,
And then we start to see, and this principle starts to show you this amazing relationship you have with self
yes,
and where everything is happening inside of you and where it's reflecting in your intimate partnership.
yeah,
So then go on the outside. So it's a first principle that starts to bring out on the outside of you, which is I've now attracted this person.
yep,
I'm in this intimate relationship, and these are the problems that I'm having. Great. Tell me about those. And
yeah,
when we start to see these problems that these people are having,
yeah,
we bring them in, and it's actually the problem, the exact same problem that they're having, right?
100%. Yes,
So it's like what he's not doing for her, which
yeah,
therefore starts to come out into the representation of the reflection of your
yeah,
partner. But it's
yes,
actually what needs to be solved. So it's always coming back to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everything is
And it's
about
so good,
you.
I'm so glad you've got this in your book, Ren, because this stuff, when people read your book, they can have a manual or a way forward to experience a conscious relationship, especially if both people in the relationship read the book. And this is what Tales and I did. I mean, we're gonna obviously we're gonna read your book. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. But the books that we read together, these sorts of books around how can we heal, do our own healing, and that we're a mirror for each other to show us where we need to do our healing, and we can hold space for each other to do that, but to own your own healing and not project it on the other person, but to own your own stuff and go, wow, this is for me to heal, but that you can reflect that back to each other. We'd lie in bed at night and I'd read a chapter and then she'd read a chapter out loud. We'd read these books together and go through the journey together. And I just think when two people in relationship can go on the journey together, it's beautiful.
It's so much easier, isn't it? So
Mm,
much easier.
mm.
And then it brings you back, it brings you, which, like I said, it's a circle, but it brings you to the last principle, which is relationships and soul contracts.
Ah, there you go. I
The
love it.
relationships that we have contracted, the
Yep.
soul members that are in our cluster, the soul members that have come through and that we have negotiated, we have signed that bottom line of the role that they're going to play and the role we're going to play for our lessons. And then for our lessons to what? To learn these lessons, to get onto our purpose, because those lessons are going to help us into it with our purpose, which then go the purpose, connection to source, connection to you. And that's why it's absurd.
Love it. Love it.
And so
It's
the
beautiful.
relationships and the soul contracts, and that's when someone comes into my healing clinic and they'll say, oh, I've got this problem. Straight away, whatever the problem is, it just happens automatically. One of the principles comes in and I
Yeah.
know which principle I'm working with. Yeah.
Yep.
Don't have a great relationship with my mom. She really pisses me off. Da, 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 da. Straight away, I know it's relationships and soul contracts. And
Yeah.
like I said, that there's these really beautiful things that we start to see. And that's how I've threaded them. What are the
Yeah.
5 things that your mum represents? What's the 5 things your dad represents? What's the 5 thing that your partner represents? Okay, let's see what's happening here. Which one do you hold? Which one does she hold? We're looking at ancestral lineage and the
Yeah.
wounding that's passed down and passed down. And
Yeah.
when I start to thread it for you and you see, and you're going to do it by yourself in the book, but
Yeah.
when you come in clinic with me, then I can do it really quickly with you. And then you go, oh my God. And what happens in this chapter is you start to it's this massive, beautiful forgiveness for that person because you know that you've contracted it by the end of it.
Yep.
And you start to understand that they're helping you. The people that have given you the biggest impact in this world are the ones who are the strongest soul member on a spiritual, on a soul level. They're
Yeah.
the ones, like my father, he was my abuser. Yeah, for 19 years of my life, he was my strongest soul member. But in
Yeah.
the human, and while I was going through it, I couldn't stand him. I didn't want to be around him. I wanted to repel him. But
Mm.
on a soul level, and when I started to understand its journey, he
Mm.
was actually my biggest fan. He was the one on a soul level who went, okay, this is what I'm going to do so you can learn this, 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 so you
Yeah.
can do this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it frees you and you start to understand it. And, you know, it's like leveling up in a game. It's like you're playing a game and every single one will take you to another level. And
Yeah.
you need to ace that level. And if you don't start the game all over again. You just have to start that level again.
Yeah.
So that's why we're in these loops, but you got to get out of the loop by making change. And the change comes with awareness,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Hold on. I don't like what's going on in my life. And before you start the principles, there's a chapter, an introduction chapter after introduction, and it's 4 pieces of your pie. And that chapter is looking at your current state of life, your 4 pieces of your pie, which is your health, your lifestyle, your relationship, and your career and purpose. And it says, be vulnerable, be true. This is your treasure. This is your journal. This is your Bible, right? No one's
Yep.
going to look at this. You are looking at this. Be truthful. What is your current state of reality?
Mm.
And then it makes you look at your desired state of your reality. So by the time you finish all the principles and you come back, then you've got the tools to go and to bring this desired state of reality towards you. It's like looking at your future self. And they say to bridge the gap, that the gap is so big between you now and who you want to be. And
Mm.
to bridge that and to bring it closer and to narrow the gap, you have to start to embodying it like it's already happened. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
to become it. But this is why the book helps you, because it's like, how do I become it? How do I become it? Do you know what I mean? I want to be successful, but I've never been successful and I think I'm unworthy and blah, 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 blah. And this, again, everything that comes in. So it's all of the principles all of the things that I learned, and I could really bring them into principles and I could just thread them. And, in my clinic, I have around 180 clients and that I service. And, I'm very busy in clinic, but it's always out of everything. And I've practiced it and practiced it and it just kind of happened naturally. It was like, okay, let's go. What are we moving through today? What are we doing?
Yep.
And I bring one of the principles in.
Yes.
And then the book finishes into what now, what happens now, what happens to you, what happens to this, Now, something really beautiful. This book is activated. It's come through me. It's my life purpose. It was blueprinted for me. It had to happen. And, sometimes I look at it and I go, who wrote this? What happened? Where did this come from? You know what I mean? I was just a kid with pain, lots of pain.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I became obsessed with the spiritual world, And
Mm.
when I look at it and I'm just kind of like, I understand it. But then when I was writing it, I had this massive feeling come through me and this download of, Rena, every single word and every single chapter is activated. So when people read this, they're going to start having the awareness that you do. What's the awareness that I do? I can see through the veil, right? I can see people's energy. I can see when you're lying. I can see your pain. I didn't want to at the beginning, but it always happened to me as a child. You know what I mean? It was just like, okay, that person was lying. Oh, that person's having an affair. I don't know why I need to know that, but they are. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
feeling these people's energy, and it was like understanding yourself from your conscious self, from your higher self. And
yeah.
this is what's starting to happen for the people who have started to read it. And, they just started and they're writing to me going, oh my God, what the hell's going on?
Right,
I'm just
right,
starting to understand this. And it's so
right.
beautiful.
Magic.
And,
It's a magic
and
book.
the last thing, it's like people say to me, who's your target audience? What is it? And I have a whole chapter. It's to parents. It's to parents and future parents. And there's a chapter called Dear Parents and Future Parents. If you
Yeah,
want to have children, if you're thinking about having children in your 20s and you want to be a mum and a dad, read this book. If
yeah,
you are a parent and you're living this life and you're holding your ancestral wounding and you still got so much pain that you haven't been able to move through,
yeah,
read this book.
yeah.
Why? Because this is what's wrong with our world. We keep on passing down this trauma from
Mm,
generation to generation. And then it has to be like yourself, like myself, like Talia. Like we have to be those brave individuals that put up our hands and say, I'm going to break this cycle,
yeah,
right? But it should be all of us doing that, especially if we're having children, because
yeah,
then it's our children's responsibility and then they become children like us. No one was in there mentoring us. I don't know about you, but did someone come into your room and go, can I
no,
tell you
no.
how powerful you are?
Yeah, yeah,
No.
no.
People wouldn't even ask me if I'm okay. Like
Yeah,
they saw me so sad as a child, and people, family friends would go, they couldn't even say, are you okay? Do you
yeah,
need anything? Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we were really, lost in a world back then. We had to discover this because there was a burning desire inside of us for change. But now in the world, there's so much of this. You know what I mean? There's so much material. There's so many workshops. There's so many spiritual masters and healers, and everyone's going to gravitate to someone that they love or they
Mm,
resonate with. But
mm,
if you're going to be a parent, if you are a parent, then you need to do the work. It's like compulsory. So you don't bring this, it can break this cycle of understanding that
yeah,
your trauma and that your pain doesn't define you, your story
yeah.
doesn't define you, and that you are so much more powerful than you know.
I love it. I love it. What a beautiful message. It's just so good to see you um, completely aligned with your version of access to source, your connection to
Thank you,
everything,
Jem.
and that you are just so easily using that to contribute to the betterment of other people. I just love it, Rena. It's
Yeah.
so good to see. It's
I
really,
always say
very
you have
humbling.
to, you know what I mean? We're serving people, but if someone came, like we said, if you can help someone else and if you can serve someone else and you've got that knowledge, because knowledge is power, why wouldn't you? It was always a burning desire for me I'm always elevating people. I love all my friends, all my family, everyone around me. I'm always like, come on, you can do that. And, you should do that job. And then what about that? And then it was like, hold on, you know what I mean? First come inside, empower you, move
Yeah,
through your stuff, and
yeah,
then you can do it for the greater good. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you
Beautiful.
so much, Jem. You're such an amazing gem. No wonder your name is Jem. You're so rare, and it's so beautiful to see such amazing, powerful male who is going through his journey, who has moved through his wounds, who has, you're sitting here and you are connecting to your feminine. And that's what I really wish for more men like yourself who are really holding that safety net for other men, because we need such change with the men in our world. And thank you. Your work is so beautiful and your service is so appreciated. Thank you so
Oh,
much for having a chat today. I love you. Thank
yeah,
you
I
so
love you too. And yes, thanks, Renna. It's and let's chat more whenever. Anything I can do to support you on your mission and this beautiful book that you've written and now are sharing with the world.
Yeah,
And
thank
Charles and I
you.
are definitely going to be reading that book, and we'll probably
Good.
read it together.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. So you can get it from major, all major online, but Amazon is the quickest and the best. And for the people who, they can get on my website. For the people who want to see me on stage applying the formula, every month on the 11th of every month, I applied in Melbourne. I apply it on stage to brave individuals who step up on stage and apply it to show you, because that's where I want you to get to. I want you
Amazing.
to be able to know it so much inside out that whenever there's something that comes up in your life, automatically you can apply it, go into your safe space, into your quiet space, and
Yep.
within a couple of minutes, you'll work it out. So, yeah,
That's
thank you
beautiful.
so much.
You're welcome.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye.
Bye, darling.